All right, let's dive into a big one today. Why do we die?
The age-old question.
We're going to check out this book, Why We Die. It's by Nobel Prize winner Venki Ramakrishnan.
Oh, I know his work.
It's not just like straight up biology, though, We're
Yeah.
talking about how different cultures view death.
Mm-hmm.
And
The evolutionary reasons behind it.
exactly. And even, are those Silicon Valley folks onto something with all this anti-aging stuff?
Right, like, are we really close to living way longer, or is it all just hype?
That's what we're here to explore.
I think it's interesting how Ramakrishnan starts the book.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't just jump right into the science.
What does he do?
He talks about how we as humans think about death. He uses this analogy, compares life to a big feast.
A feast.
Yeah, like we're all enjoying this awesome party, but eventually we all gotta leave. It's that leaving part that freaks us out.
Right, that unknown. Makes sense. It's like being dragged away from the best party ever. No wonder people come up with ways to, deal with that fear.
Exactly. And a philosopher, Stephen Cave, outlined 4 main ways, historically, that people cope with death.
Oh, I'd love to hear this.
Well, there's the obvious one. Plan A. Just figure out how to live forever.
Uh-huh. The immortalist dream.
Hmm.
Those billionaires funding anti-aging research, they're definitely on that plan, right?
Sounds like it. They want that feast to never end.
Right.
Then there's Plan B, physical rebirth, like reincarnation. Plan C, the idea that the soul lives on.
Makes sense. What about the last one?
Plan D is all about legacy. Kids, art, accomplishments, things that live on after you.
So you're saying building a giant pyramid is just a fancy way of coping with death.
Maybe. You could see it that way.
Fascinating stuff.
But Ramakrishnan points out how science has changed things.
In what way?
Some still hold on to the soul or rebirth ideas, but nowadays a lot of focus is on extending life or making a lasting impact.
Like those Plan A and D folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Which brings us back to that fundamental question. Why do we die in the first place? Is it just, like, to make room for the next generation?
That's a common thought, but it's more complicated than that. Evolutionarily, it's about which genes get passed on.
Oh, right, survival of the fittest.
Geneticists like Haldane and Fisher, they showed that genes which are harmful later in life.
After you've had kids, probably.
Exactly, those genes don't get eliminated by natural selection.
So evolution cares about getting us to reproductive age, not keeping us around forever.
Right, like a best before date. A good example is Huntington's disease.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
It often doesn't show up until after someone's had kids, so that gene can keep being passed down.
Wow, so it really is a numbers game, at least from an evolutionary perspective. Makes you think about how much control we really have over our own lifespans.
That's where things get really interesting. We have to look at the incredible world inside ourselves.
Right, all that microscopic machinery keeping us going.
Ramakrishnan compares a cell to a bustling city. So many processes happening to keep us alive.
Like a city that never sleeps.
And at the heart of it all is DNA.
The instruction manual for life. We all know the basics, but how does Ramakrishnan connect DNA to aging and death?
Well, DNA can copy itself, which is amazing.
Right, that's how we grow and repair.
But the copying isn't always perfect, and over time, DNA gets damaged. He compares it to, like, ancient ruins.
Oh, I see. They start out grand but crumble over time.
Exactly. Our DNA is under constant attack.
What kind of attack?
Well, there's UV radiation from the sun, for one.
Sun damage.
It can cause these kinks in the DNA, mess up its structure.
Oh, I see. But our cells have ways of dealing with damage, right? Like some kind of repair system.
Oh, absolutely. And it's incredibly sophisticated. We have these enzymes that can actually cut out damaged bits of DNA.
Wow.
And replace them with the correct sequence. It's happening in our cells right now.
It's like a microscopic repair crew constantly patching things up.
A great way to think about it.
Are these repair systems unique to humans?
Not at all. Even simple bacteria have them. Shows how fundamental they are to life.
That's incredible.
And there's another key player here. The P53 protein, sometimes called the guardian of the genome.
A superhero protein, what does it do?
It's like a security guard for our DNA, constantly watching for damage. If it spots a problem, it can trigger repairs.
Oh, so it calls in the repair crew.
Yeah, or it can halt cell division to give them time to work. And if the damage is too bad,
It does what?
it can initiate cell death.
Wow, so it's like a tough love parent for our cells, making sure things don't spiral out of control.
A good analogy.
But even with all these safeguards, our cells don't live forever, right?
Yeah.
What determines their lifespan?
That's where Leonard Hayflick's research comes in. He found that normal cells can only divide a certain number of times.
There's a limit.
Yeah, it's called the Hayflick limit.
If we know about this limit, why haven't we found a way to, extend it? What does Ramakrishnan say?
He points to structures called telomeres. They're at the ends of our chromosomes.
Chromosomes. That's where our DNA is packaged, right?
Right, and telomeres act like the little plastic tips on shoelaces.
Oh, I see, to stop them from fraying.
Exactly. They protect the ends of our chromosomes.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do telomeres relate to aging?
Every time a cell divides, its telomeres get a little shorter. Eventually they get too short, and the cell can't divide anymore.
It enters. What's it called?
Senescence. Basically, it stops dividing.
So it's like a countdown timer on our cells. What if there was a way to rewind that timer? Is that even possible?
That's where epigenetics comes in. It's a really exciting field. Think of a cell as a city with a constantly changing landscape. Epigenetics is like the city planner.
Okay, so what does the city planner do?
It controls which genes are active and which are silent, without actually changing the DNA sequence.
So it's like a dimmer switch for our genes.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where it gets really fascinating. John Gurdon did these cloning experiments.
I've heard of them.
He showed that a cell's fate isn't fixed.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, a skin cell doesn't have to stay a skin cell forever. Its function can potentially be changed.
Whoa, so maybe we can manipulate those epigenetic switches to, like, reverse aging.
That's a big question researchers are exploring. Shinya Yamanaka, he actually figured out how to reprogram adult cells.
Reprogram them how?
Back into a stem cell-like state, we call them iPS cells.
Induced pluripotent stem cells. Wow, that's incredible. Like turning back the clock on a cell?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a huge area of research. But there are some potential risks, too.
What kind of risks?
Some tissues made from iPS cells have shown a higher risk of tumors.
Oh, so it's not a simple fix. Still, the idea that we might be able to manipulate cell fate like that, mind-blowing.
Totally. Now, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
You were talking about the Silicon Valley types earlier. They're really pushing the boundaries of aging research.
They are. It makes you wonder, are we on the verge of some major breakthroughs? Or are we chasing a fantasy?
It's a good question. And honestly, I don't think anyone has a definitive answer yet. But the research is moving fast. There are a lot of different approaches being explored.
Like what? What are some of those promising avenues?
Well, there's gene editing, for one. CRISPR technology has given us the ability to make very precise changes to DNA.
I've heard of CRISPR. It's like a molecular scalpel, right?
Yeah, exactly. And researchers are using it to try to correct genes that contribute to aging and disease.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
It is. But there are ethical considerations, too. We have to be very careful about making changes to the human genome. We don't fully understand the long-term consequences.
It's not something to be taken lightly. What else is being explored?
Senolytics are another area of interest. These are drugs that target senescent cells.
Those zombie cells we talked about earlier.
Right. Remember how I said that getting rid of senescent cells in mice extended their lifespan?
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Well, senolytics are designed to do the same thing in humans. There are already some in clinical trials.
So we might actually have a way to clear out those cellular troublemakers.
Potentially. It's still early days, but the results so far are encouraging.
It's amazing to think how quickly this field is advancing. What other approaches are showing promise?
Well, there's also a lot of research into things like NAD+ boosters and metformin.
Those sound familiar. What are they?
NAD+ is a molecule that's essential for cellular energy production, and it declines with age. NAD+ boosters are designed to increase its levels in the body.
So it's like giving our cells a boost of energy.
Exactly. And metformin is a drug that's been used to treat type 2 diabetes for decades.
I've heard of that.
But research has shown that it also has some anti-aging effects. It seems to activate certain pathways that promote longevity.
So it's like repurposing an existing drug for a new purpose.
Exactly. And that's a common strategy in aging research. Scientists are looking at existing drugs to see if they can be used to target the aging process.
Makes sense. It's probably faster than developing entirely new drugs.
Definitely. And it can be less risky, too, because we already know a lot about the safety profile of these drugs.
It sounds like there's a lot of exciting work being done in this field. But even with all these advances, we're still a long way from immortality, right?
Right. We're still a long way from understanding all the complexities of aging and how to truly slow it down or reverse it.
But the fact that we're even having this conversation, that we're exploring these possibilities, it's pretty incredible.
It is. And it raises so many questions, not just about the science, but about the ethical and societal implications of extending lifespan. What would it mean for our world, for our relationships, for our sense of self?
Those are some heavy questions. And they're not just for scientists to answer. We all need to be part of this conversation as these technologies continue to develop.
Absolutely. The future of aging is a future we'll all share.
Now, I have to admit, I've been noticing some age-related forgetfulness lately. Is that just normal brain fog
Yeah.
or a sign of something more serious?
A little forgetfulness is common as we age, but it's important to distinguish that from neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Oh, right. Those become more common with age.
Exactly, and they involve a different kind of cellular malfunction.
What causes those diseases? What's going wrong at the cellular level?
It comes down to proteins. Proteins are these long chains of amino acids.
Right. I remember learning about that in biology class.
And they have to fold into specific shapes to function correctly. Imagine it like origami.
Oh, I see. You start with a flat sheet and fold it into a 3D shape.
Exactly. And if the folding goes wrong, you get a misfolded protein. And those can cause problems. They can clump together, disrupt cellular processes.
Like a cellular game of origami gone wrong?
A great way to put it. In Alzheimer's, for example, you get these clumps called plaques and tangles.
I've heard of those.
They're formed by misfolded proteins, and they disrupt brain function.
But our bodies have ways of dealing with these misfolded proteins, right?
Yes, thankfully. Our cells have a remarkable quality control system.
Like what?
Well, we have chaperones, which help proteins fold correctly.
They're like the origami instructors.
Exactly. And then we have proteasomes, which break down the faulty ones.
So it's like a constant cleanup crew making sure the cell stays tidy.
And then there's autophagy. This is like taking out the trash on a grander scale.
So autophagy is like a cellular spring cleaning.
Exactly. It gets rid of damaged organelles and protein clumps.
That's impressive. But does this cleaning crew become less efficient as we age?
Unfortunately, yes. That decline in efficiency contributes to the buildup of damage, and that can lead to age-related diseases.
It's like the city's sanitation department going on strike.
A good analogy.
You know, we were talking about caloric restriction earlier.
Right, how it extends lifespan in some animals.
Is there a molecular explanation for that?
There is. It involves a drug called rapamycin.
Rapamycin.
Yeah, it was first discovered in a bacterium on Easter Island.
Wow, what a story.
Right, it was initially used as an immunosuppressant, but then researchers stumbled upon its anti-aging effects.
A happy accident.
Yeah, totally. And the key to understanding rapamycin is its target, the TO protein.
TOR? What's that?
It's a master regulator of cell growth and metabolism. Think of it like the control tower of the cell.
Okay, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Exactly. When there are plenty of nutrients around, TR promotes growth. But when nutrients are scarce,
Like during caloric restriction.
exactly, TR activity goes down. And that triggers a cascade of changes that promote longevity.
So it's like putting the cell on a lean diet.
Yeah.
But why does inhibiting TOR extend lifespan?
The full picture is still being researched, but it seems like it activates processes like autophagy, boosts antioxidant defenses, even improves mitochondrial function.
Mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell.
You got it. They're responsible for converting the food we eat into usable energy.
Like tiny batteries keeping our cells powered up.
A perfect analogy. And what's fascinating is that they have their own DNA, separate from the DNA in our nucleus.
Wait, really, why is that?
Scientists think mitochondria were once free-living bacteria. Billions of years ago, they got engulfed by other cells. This is the endosymbiotic theory.
It's like a cellular roommate situation that turned into a lifelong partnership.
Exactly, and a very successful one, clearly. But this unique origin also means mitochondrial DNA can be a source of problems as we age.
Problems? Like what?
Well, for one thing, it's more vulnerable to damage. It doesn't have the same robust repair mechanisms as the DNA in our nucleus.
So our cells are literally running out of juice as we get older.
In a way, yeah. As mitochondrial DNA accumulates damage, the efficiency of energy production goes down.
I see. Are there other problems with mitochondria as we age?
Yeah, one theory is that free radicals, those reactive oxygen species, contribute to aging.
I've heard of free radicals. They're like tiny troublemakers, right?
They can be. They're highly reactive molecules that can damage DNA, proteins, other cellular components. It's like our cells are slowly rusting from the inside out.
Doesn't sound good. So are free radicals the main culprits in aging?
It's more complex than that. While free radicals can cause damage, they also play important roles in cell signaling. The current thinking is that it's not just about free radical damage, but about the overall decline in mitochondrial function over time.
So it's a combination of things, damage and the cell's ability to repair itself.
Exactly. And this decline in mitochondrial function is linked to a whole range of age-related issues. But there's another hallmark of aging we need to talk about. Senescent cells?
Senescent cells, those are remind me?
They're cells that have stopped dividing but haven't died. They just hang out in tissues and secrete inflammatory molecules.
So they're like cellular zombies,
Yeah.
just hanging around causing trouble.
Yeah, kind of. And this chronic low-grade inflammation they create, it's linked to a lot of age-related diseases.
It's like having a constant simmering fire in our bodies.
Not ideal. And as we age, the number of these senescent cells increases.
So is there anything we can do about them?
There might be. Research has shown that eliminating senescent cells in mice actually extended their lifespan
Wow, really?
and improved their health.
So could targeting these cells be a way to combat aging in humans?
It's a very promising area of research, but more work needs to be done. And speaking of promising research, there's a fascinating history of parabiosis experiments.
Parabiosis. That rings a bell.
It's where you surgically join two animals together, so they share a blood supply.
Oh, right. I've heard of that. And what did they find?
Early research showed that when you pair an older animal with a younger one,
Yeah.
the older one shows signs of rejuvenation.
It's like a real-life fountain of youth.
In a way, yes. And this has led to a resurgence of interest in the potential of young blood to reverse age-related decline.
I've even heard stories about wealthy people seeking out young blood transfusions. Is there any scientific basis to that?
Well, there's some evidence that factors in young blood can rejuvenate older tissues. For example, research has shown it can improve muscle regeneration and cognitive function in older mice.
So there might be something to this vampire approach after all.
Hold on, it's not that simple. Parabiosis is a pretty invasive procedure, and it's not without risks. And while young blood shows some promise, we're a long way from understanding exactly what's responsible for the effects, and even further from knowing if it would be safe or effective in humans.
So it's not a quick fix.
Definitely not. But it's fascinating to think that the secrets to slowing down aging might be right there in our blood.
Absolutely. And it highlights how incredibly complex aging is. It's not one process, but this whole web of interconnected factors.
Right.
From our genes and environment to the very cells that make us up.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying it so fascinating.
And a little bit overwhelming, to be honest.
I know what you mean. There's so much we still don't know. But every new discovery brings us closer to understanding this fundamental mystery of life.
And maybe even to finding ways to live longer, healthier lives. It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is. And it's important to remember that while we're exploring ways to extend lifespan, we also need to think about what it means to live a meaningful life, no matter how long or short it may be.
Well said. And that's something we'll definitely be exploring further in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be stepping back from the biological details to explore the ethical and societal implications of extending lifespan. It's going to get philosophical. Back again.
So we've gone from ancient ruins to cellular repair crews. Now things are going to get a little more philosophical.
Sounds intriguing.
If we could actually extend our lifespans dramatically.
Should we?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
What would it do to society? To relationships?
Ramakrishnan really dives into these big questions. He points out that longer lifespans could mean huge changes for society. Imagine retirement being a distant concept. The whole dynamic between generations would be totally different.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. Our whole system is built around a certain lifespan, right?
Yeah.
Education, healthcare, work, even family structures.
Yeah.
Everything would need a rethink.
It's true. And what about personal identity? Who are we if we live decades, even centuries longer? Would our sense of self change over all that time?
It's like asking, who am I, on a cosmic scale? Would we even recognize ourselves after so long? And what about our relationships? Would those we cherish still hold meaning over, vast stretches of time?
It's really deep stuff. No easy answers.
Definitely not.
But Ramakrishnan also makes this point, and it's interesting. He challenges the idea that aging automatically equals decline.
Oh, you mean like the stereotype that older people are less capable?
Exactly. He acknowledges there are physical and cognitive changes, of course.
Right, those are realities.
But he pushes back against using age as a rigid measure of someone's ability. He says there's so much variation between individuals.
Right, everyone ages differently.
And experience, wisdom, those things can be valuable even as other abilities might change.
So it's not about pitting generations against each other. It's about recognizing the strengths that each stage of life brings.
Exactly. Building a society that values those diverse contributions
Mm-hmm.
and allows people to stay engaged, productive throughout their lives, no matter how long those lives become.
That's a great point. But let's get a bit personal here for a sec. If we could live way longer, would we even want to?
Good question.
Wouldn't it, lead to some kind of existential fatigue, life just dragging on and on?
Ramakrishnan actually suggests that maybe chasing extreme longevity is more about chasing an illusion than finding real fulfillment.
Interesting.
He says that even now, with our limited lifespans, we're kind of obsessed with death, wanting more time.
We always want what we don't have, right?
But we don't always find contentment in the present moment. So would living longer really make us happier? Or would we just find new worries, new things to chase?
It's like we're always looking over the fence thinking the grass is greener somewhere else.
It's true. And he raises this other really thought-provoking point. Maybe death actually gives life meaning.
Wait, what? How could that be? How can the fact that we're going to die make life more meaningful?
Think about it this way. If we had unlimited time, wouldn't we be more likely to procrastinate, to put off our dreams, thinking there's always tomorrow?
Boy,
But knowing that our time is limited, that can be a powerful motivator. It pushes us to make the most of each day.
like those bucket list things. Suddenly, experiences seem more valuable when we realize they're not infinite.
Exactly. That sense of urgency of making each day count, it can give our lives a deeper sense of purpose.
So maybe it's not about living longer, but living better, making the most of the time we do have.
That's a really key takeaway. And Ramakrishnan reminds us that the quest for immortality is a story as old as time. It's in ancient myths. It's in modern transhumanism.
Ah, transhumanism, using technology to, overcome our biological limitations.
Exactly. Including death. It's both fascinating and kind of terrifying.
Totally.
Transhumanists imagine a future where we merge with machines, upload our consciousness, basically escape our bodies entirely.
Sounds like something straight out of science fiction. But some of those ideas are being explored, right?
Absolutely. Brain-computer interfaces, cryonics. The line between sci-fi and reality is getting blurrier.
It's kind of freaky, actually.
It raises so many questions. If we could truly transcend our biology, would we even be human anymore? What would happen to our values, our relationships?
It's like leaping into the unknown. And while full-blown transhumanism might seem far off, we need to think about how technology, like gene editing and AI, are already changing what it means to be human.
Ramakrishnan warns us that technology often advances faster than our ability to understand its consequences. Like, look at social media. It promised connection, but it's also led to things like misinformation and division.
A cautionary tale for sure. We need to be really careful as we explore these possibilities.
Absolutely. We need to have these conversations, weigh the potential benefits and risks of extending lifespan, think about the societal impacts.
It's not just about adding years, it's about shaping a future where those years are meaningful.
Exactly. And there's another layer that Ramakrishnan brings up, the ethics and regulations surrounding aging research.
Oh, right, is aging a disease?
Yeah, that's a huge debate. Is it a natural part of life or something we should be trying to cure?
I've heard arguments on both sides.
And that distinction has big implications for how research is done, how it's funded. If aging is classified as a disease, it opens the door to things like clinical trials for anti-aging therapies.
Which could really speed up progress, right?
It could. But there are concerns about, medicalizing a natural process, creating these unrealistic expectations for a cure for aging.
It's a tricky balance. We want to alleviate suffering, improve health span, but not deny the natural cycle of life and death.
That's the key. And this debate really highlights how important nuanced thinking is in this field. Ethical considerations are crucial.
So while we wait for those potential breakthroughs, are there things we can do NW to increase our chances of living longer, healthier lives?
Ramakrishnan emphasizes those classic lifestyle choices: diet, exercise, sleep.
The tried and true stuff. Eat well, move your body, get enough rest. Those are still relevant with all this cutting-edge science going on.
More than ever. They align perfectly with what we know about the biology of aging. They help maintain healthy cell function, reduce the risk of age-related diseases.
It's like setting ourselves up for success.
Exactly. And even if we can't stop time, we can definitely influence how we experience it.
That's empowering. We're not just passive passengers in this aging process.
We have agency. We can make choices that impact our health outcomes. And that's important to remember.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into why we die. We've been through the science, the cells, the what-ifs of living forever.
A lot to ponder.
For sure. But now, let's shift gears a bit. How have different cultures throughout history thought about death?
It's fascinating, right? Death is this universal experience, but the ways we express it are so diverse. Ramakrishnan points out how fear and fascination with death, they're woven into our stories, our art, our religions, going way back.
It makes me think of those Egyptian pyramids, like these huge, elaborate tombs built for the afterlife.
Exactly. Or the Day of the Dead in Mexico, where they celebrate death, not mourn it.
Right. Every culture has its own way of dealing with it.
And those expressions often reflect deeper beliefs about the soul, consciousness, what happens after we die. Some cultures imagine an afterlife, others focus on the legacy we leave behind.
It's like this global tapestry of beliefs woven from hope and fear, and our need to make sense of this huge mystery.
And those beliefs can really shape how people approach aging and death. In cultures where death is seen as a transition to something better, they might not put as much emphasis on prolonging life.
It becomes more about quality of life, not just quantity, accepting the natural cycle instead of fighting against it.
Ramakrishnan also pushes back against this idea that science has, stripped away all the mystery of death, made it cold and clinical.
Yeah, I get that. Like science reduces everything to just biological processes.
But Ramakrishnan argues that science can actually deepen our awe. The more we learn about how life works, the more amazing it becomes.
The more we know, the more mysterious it gets, right?
And death, as this ultimate unknown, remains the biggest mystery of all. And that's why it's important to approach these questions with a sense of humility. We might never fully understand consciousness or what happens after we die.
But that shouldn't stop us from asking, right?
Yeah.
Curiosity is what drives us forward.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great about this whole conversation. We're weaving together science, culture, philosophy, this centuries-old discussion about what it means to be human, to age, and ultimately to face our mortality.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into why we die, what are some key takeaways?
Well, first, remember that aging is complex. It's influenced by so many things. And while research is promising, there's a lot we still don't know. So be wary of those anti-aging claims you see out there.
Right, a healthy dose of skepticism is always good.
Second, even if we could dramatically extend lifespan, we have to really think about what that means. For society, for our sense of self, would it even be a good thing?
Those are huge questions for all of us, not just scientists.
Exactly. And finally, this whole exploration reminds us to focus on living well and now W, no matter how long we have.
Make the most of it, right?
By making healthy choices, building strong relationships, finding purpose, we can make each day count.
It's about embracing the journey, not obsessing over the destination. And on that note, we highly recommend checking out Venki Ramakrishnan's book, Why We Die. It's a fantastic read. It'll challenge your assumptions and leave you thinking about the mysteries of life and death in a whole new way. Thanks for joining us.